Here we are in September. Can you believe that you're getting ready for a BYU-Utah game in September?
Yeah, different spin on the game, to say the least. But as far as the preparation and the anticipation for the game, it feels fairly normal. But having no conference implications and the timing of the game certainly is a departure from what we're used to.
Both athletic directors said it was important to them to keep scheduling this game. Was it important to you to keep playing BYU even though you're not in conferences anymore?
I think if it works into the schedule, and that's going to be, remains to be seen when, the supposed changes that are still on the horizon, when everything happens and the dust settles, then if it can still be played, then that's great. But I don't know if it's going to be possible down the road. We'll have to, time will tell.
How different is it playing this as your third game of the season? Normally you have plenty of film and both teams know each other really well. This year's a little different.
It is. That's a big difference, and both teams are in similar circumstances in a way. Both teams have new offensive coordinators, and so the tape last year is not real applicable, and only have 2 games to go on this year, and so your body of work that you usually have to study and dissect is not anywhere near as extensive as it usually is.
You played on one side, you coach on the other. Any differences you've seen in the rivalry from BYU side or Utah side?
I think it's gotten more intense from a fan standpoint. It's always been intense with the players, and the players have always handled it well, I thought, and they continue to do so. But sometimes we get, we cross that line, with the fans, and I think we got to guard against that.
Do you think this helps playing it earlier in the year?
It could, because you don't have the anticipation and the build-up that you've had, in years past, with everything building towards that grand finale, I guess you can call it. And so maybe that'll temper things a little bit. We'll have to find out.
You mentioned new offensive coordinators. You bring on Norm Chow, who was a coach when you played at BYU.
Right.
How do you like being reunited with Norm Chow?
It's been good. He's one of the most accomplished coordinators in college football. He's done a lot of great things at a lot of different places. And our players have embraced his system, and it's a work in progress. That things don't change overnight, and we got to continue to stay the course and just continue to settle into this new scheme and to the way he runs things offensively.
What do you remember from playing in the BYU-Utah game as a player back in the 70s and 80s?
Very intense. Both sides get up for it, and I remember, you're talking about some time now. We're talking 30 years, I guess. Yeah, 30 years since I was a senior. But I think we were 3-1 in my 4 years there. We got beat up here in Rice Eccles by a Randy Gomez-led Utah team that beat us, and then I think we got them the next 3 years. But anyway, you remember the intensity of it and the competitiveness of it.
And then you coached at Utah for a long time. When you took the head coaching job here, you had your pick. Do you want to coach at BYU? Do you want to coach at Utah? How difficult was that decision for you? Do you remember that process?
Yeah, I certainly remember it. Yeah, you never forget something like that. But it was ironic. Both jobs came open almost literally within hours of each other. Maybe a day at the most. And when you're talking about your rival schools with vacancies in the head coaching position at the same time, and being in the middle of it, it was a taxing time. It was certainly a lot of soul searching and thought went into it. And the allure of going back to your alma mater is strong. I mean, that's would be for anybody. I had a good experience down there while I played. I got to play for Coach Edwards and a great coaching staff, Doug Scoville and my father, and so had a great experience. But at the time, I'd been here for 10 years, so I had a lot invested in this program, and that's what ultimately won out, is the investment I had here, and my family being entrenched in the community up here in Salt Lake, and I think it's worked out well for both sides.
Does being the head coach at Utah diminish your playing career at BYU at all?
Not to me. I guess that's something that somebody else would have to answer. But for me, like I said, I had a great experience down there. Won a lot of games, and made a lot of friendships that are still intact.
I want to talk about one game in particular. You'll remember the 1980 Holiday Bowl.
Oh,
Everyone
sure.
talks about Jim McMahon to Clay Brown, the Hail Mary.
Right.
But they kind of forget an important tackle for loss, the one Kyle Whittingham had on third down.
Yeah, I remember that very well. And boy, what a game. I mean, so many things had to line up and go right for us there at the end, and they all, one after another transpired. But yeah, to set up that potential Hail Mary, we had to get a stop. And we hadn't stopped them much all day or all night. And so that was a makeshift defense that we drew up on the sidelines actually in a timeout, during the course of a timeout. And so that was one of the many plays that had to happen to pull that game out of the fire.
You executed it, and your dad called it.
That's right, exactly. You probably weren't even born when that happened.
No, I was born in '86.
Okay, so you know, yeah.
My parents have told me all about it, though.
Okay, did they stay? Were they there?
They were in the Midwest. My mom's from Indiana, my dad was from Michigan, and it was like 1 in the morning, and people went home.
Right.
And they're calling him saying, dude, you just missed the best ending ever.
Yeah, the stadium was like a fifth full by the time the game was decided.
Newspaper articles were already written.
Right, yeah, exactly.
Yeah. What was it like playing for your dad there at BYU, and then later you coach under him at Utah, and then he comes back on staff and coaches under you? That's a unique experience.
It was a great experience, and to have the chance to play for your dad is, I wouldn't wish it upon everybody, because sometimes it doesn't work out. You hear about, in situations where it can be too hard on one or the other, but in our case, it worked out very well. You won't find a better coach, defensive coach, ever. I've never come across one that had his knowledge and expertise and really took an average player, me, and taught me some things and was able to have some success. And then as a coach, working together as colleagues in the coaching profession, what a great learning experience to come in here and work under him as a position coach while he was a defensive coordinator. Then those roles were reversed a few years later. He went to the NFL, then came back, and I had gotten the coordinator job here, and he was working with me. And so invaluable to my career, and I wouldn't trade that for anything. It was a great time.
There's some plays that you're down there on the sideline wishing he was still there that you could defer to him.
Absolutely, yeah. If he was still around, then he'd be involved, no question about it.
Most people that have played for or worked with Lavelle Edwards will look to him as their #1 mentor. You're probably the one exception because you had that experience of being with your dad.
Yeah, my dad would be my #1 mentor without a doubt. But close behind is Lavelle and Urban Meyer, who I learned a great deal from here in my 2 years with him, and then Ron McBride, who gave me my first opportunity to coach Division I football, and so I've had a lot. I've tried to take the best of all the people that I've had the good fortune of being around.
Ron McBride and Lavelle Edwards probably had the best relationship that BYU-Utah coaches have ever had. And Bronco Mendenhall on Monday said that your relationship is more professional. How would you say your relationship with Bronco
I would
is?
agree with that. I think it's one of mutual respect, at least on my part, and professionalism. And times have changed. There's so much more scrutiny now, and with the internet and all the social media, I don't know if it's possible to duplicate what Coach Mack and Lavelle did. I don't know if they could do it in this day and age, because it's such a different it's a different animal now. Everything has changed so dramatically that I'm not sure that would be feasible. But anyway, yeah, with me and Bronco, I would describe it just as he did, a professional relationship.
Your dad coached you at BYU, and then you had a chance to coach your son for a couple of years at Utah. What was it like being the son of the father-son coaching relationship and then the father of the father-son relationship?
It's good. Now, it's a little different dynamic in that as the head coach, I don't directly, I don't coach him directly, whereas I was a linebacker and he was a linebacker coach, and so that was direct every day, hours on end on the field and in the meeting room. And so a little bit different in that respect, but I've enjoyed that nonetheless, and it's been great having him around. And my daughter was a cheerleader here for us, a few years back, which also was a great experience to have my daughter on the sidelines cheering for our team.
Not many people have a relationship with their rival's athletic director either, but Tom Holmoe was a teammate of yours at BYU.
Sure was, yeah. Me and Tom are very close, and we're in the same recruiting class, the class of '78, and it was, I hit it off with Tom right away, as soon as I met him in that incoming class that fall of '78. And we've maintained a friendship ever since.
12 of the last 15 games between BYU and Utah have been decided by 7 points or less. Do you see any reason why this year would be any different?
On paper, it looks like it may be more of the same, but in the rivalry game, anything can happen, and trends that may have transpired and taken place up to the game oftentimes have no impact or are not factors in the game, and things play out completely different. And so, we'll have to see how it plays out. But you're right. The last many years, it's been back and forth and very closely contested.
How much is special teams going to be on your mind this weekend? Because last year BYU loses on a blocked field goal, and then last week at USC, Utah loses on a blocked field goal.
Yeah, special teams very often comes into a very critical component in the outcome of a game, and and we place a great deal of emphasis on special teams and work on it hard and spend a lot of time on it. And you know, we have a plan to win, and it's a 4-point plan to win, and playing great special teams is one of those points. And so we pay you know, a lot of attention to it, and it's very possible that it could be another, you know, a big factor in this year's game.
Your last trip to Provo, a loss in overtime, and your very first game you ever coached against BYU as the head coach at Utah went to overtime, but you came out on top in Provo in that game. That was a little different experience.
Yeah, it was, and I guess if you're in the game long enough, you're going to be on both ends of just about everything, and the good, the bad, the fortunate, the unfortunate, and you know, I don't think there's been an era in the rivalry that's been as competitive as what's going on now. You know, I can't, you know, certainly not in the not too distant past, but you know, there's been times where Utah won many in a row, and then vice versa, and now it's very competitive.
Does it still mean as much to you as a coach, even though you're not in the same conference anymore?
Sure. You know, I don't think that has anything to do with it. You know, it's still an in-state rivalry game that, you know, just the geographics of the whole thing, you know, the proximity of each school, and being around, you know, the red and blue is year-round. You know, it's not just on this game. You know, there's not a state line separating us. I mean, we're all coexisting together, and then, you know, you play the game, and you know, it's almost a 365-day-a-year deal.
So do you treat this like just any other game, or do you understand what it is?
We treat it like any other game as far as our preparation and our approach. You know, and that's just how we operate. And if there was a better way to do things, we wouldn't save it just for this game. We'd do it every single week.
Okay. Thank you, Coach.